I think in a matter of this kind, it would be appropriate for me to start by saying that this is not the kind of thing I do because I enjoy it. When you hear that 22 and 23 people have died in a collision, it is very, very hard to remain objective. At the same time, I'm human, and we are exposed to what I have now come to describe as the armchair prosecutors. You're exposed to the versions in the media, the various opinions, and you feel a force of influence. I have a tendency to want to answer many of those questions, but of course, being involved in the investigation directly, it is my job and responsibility to remain objective, to remain unemotional, and to remain detached from the involved parties. That having been said, I was contacted and appointed in this matter very, very shortly after the collision, and I was informed only of what was available in the media, i.e. the crash videos. When you look at the videos that were released on YouTube, etc., it's very easy to see that some truck came down some hill and ran through some cars, and a bunch of people passed away, most sadly. Then my work starts. The important thing that we've got to keep in mind is that, for starters, I immediately demanded to audit the whole fleet of the owner in this matter. I have no interest only in his one vehicle. I have an interest in what I can describe as the prevailing culture of maintenance. Often when you look at many vehicles, you start seeing a psychology relating to an individual vehicle. That covers the human factor in terms of what is going on at his operation. It is very important also to keep in mind that my work and what I release in terms of the evidence I gather, I cannot share in the media or in the public because of the simple fact that I'll be called to testify as an expert in the matter. I have to be seen as impartial and objective, and everything I do must be designed in a way that it does not encumber on the investigation by the South African Police Services. In this matter, we were fairly fortunate. The investigating officers appointed in this matter, specifically the mechanical investigators and crash investigators from the South African Police Service, are people I know and people I've worked with in the past. I'm comfortable with what they are doing, I'm comfortable with their approach, and I have a comfortable relationship with those people. So we are very comfortable to share our findings with them. At the same token, we must also look at the actual mechanical condition of that particular vehicle. It's important to keep in mind that a vehicle of this kind is much more complex mechanically than a light motor vehicle. So it's important to keep in mind that you can take a vehicle like that, you can purchase a brand new vehicle, it can be compliant with every single stipulation of the Road Traffic Act, you can deploy it into the field, and the way in which it is operated by the driver, and I'm not talking about abuse such as driving through walls and over culverts, I'm talking purely about the use of brakes over retarders, engine retardation, low gear engagement, etc., can actually evolve into a location where the vehicle starts becoming unroadworthy. Now, it's also important to keep in mind that these kinds of vehicles rely on a brake system that work differently from car brake systems. If you were to operate a vehicle of this kind, you cannot only use brakes. They are simply not adequate. That's why you have a legal requirement to stop at the so-called compulsory stops at the top of most hills. You'll see one outside Pietermaritzburg. It's well known. Many trucks have to stop there. There are 2 or 3, in fact, and you would have seen one on this hill as well. One of the requirements of a driver, and the reason why that is there, is because by law, we all understand that these vehicles cannot be stopped on foot brake alone. Therefore, the driver is required to approach this area, to slow his vehicle down and stop, to then engage. You'll see there's a big sign with an L letter on it. That means engage lowest gear. Not any gear, the lowest gear. Then in that lowest gear, you would continue down that hill. That means that if you do nothing as a driver, if you simply sit there and wait, the vehicle will maintain at a lower speed. That's how it was designed, that's how it was intended, and that is what that stop is about. In that configuration, speed cannot occur. However, if a driver were to then depress his clutch and take that vehicle out of the lowest gear and it exceeds the speed at which that gear is designed to operate, he will have a problem getting it back into that gear. In this case, you can have a runaway vehicle. In that case, you'd have the driver frantically trying to get the vehicle back in gear, and he will not be able to. So this is a very important aspect, and that's one of the aspects we investigate in a matter of this kind. The next thing that is important is the design of the road. If you travel down the road in question, you have certain speed limits posted. Often you see a speed limit within 16T below it, which is a speed limit applying to any vehicle in excess of 16 tons in weight. In this case, there's a speed limit of 60 kilometers per hour. Surprisingly, further down the road, there's a second speed limit. This one says 80 kilometers per hour, but does not specify the type of vehicle. So as a driver of a commercial vehicle, you might be lulled into the false sense that you can now accelerate, which is not necessarily the best course of action at that time. The other thing we look at, of course, is the human factors in terms of the capability of the person operating the vehicle. In this instance, we've just had a radio interview this morning in which the Road Freight Association agreed, and several callers agreed to the following. Truck drivers are typically tested on a sunny day on a flat road. They are then issued with vehicles in excess of 60 tons sometimes and sent into the real world where we have downhills, rain, fog, other traffic, etc. Unfortunately, we cannot create those environments during the testing process, so we have to evaluate that as well. We then look at the environmental factors, including the road traffic volumes, the road traffic patterns. In South Africa, we have a problem with what is described as traffic friction. We all know that some road users are impatient. They like to drive fast and like to shoot in and out of traffic. Other drivers are oblivious and they focus only in front of them, and they hardly ever use their rear view mirrors, and they cause obstruction and frustration. Yet others operate vehicles that are incapable of reaching certain speeds, yet they prefer to stay in the fast lane on national roads, etc. With that traffic friction or difference in the way in which people use traffic comes a cultural friction. That element also plays a role. So if we look at the possible contributive factors in a matter of this kind, it goes way beyond who was at fault. Because if we can simply say who was at fault, if the driver died, the only person that would remain would be the owner. We charge him, it goes through court, and whatever would happen. But how do we stop it? What do we do to prevent it? How do we change it? Already we've got the government saying they want to govern all vehicles going into and around that area. My question is, if it was truly the fault of the driver or the fault of the owner, why govern everybody? Why not just those people that are wrong? So I think before we rush along and make decisions, we need to properly analyze and interpret. For this purpose, the Road Traffic Management Corporation would have appointed an expert to investigate from their perspective as well. That person would work, as I have before myself, towards establishing a very detailed forensic report for inclusion in the criminal docket. With other words, they would have access to an expert at high cost, as any private person would know, to go and analyze this crash and to support the police in their efforts. To this effect, we are aware of the efforts that are taking place, and I would personally ask that people simply allow the process to continue. You don't come to a conclusion on a matter like this within a week. People have tweeted me and asked me questions like, can I give evidence to the prosecutor? And prosecutor has not even been assigned yet because the investigation is still ongoing. The police services have to follow up on certain information we provide them with. We are probably going to have a meeting in which we'll discuss my finding versus theirs. The last thing we want is that we disagree on elements of this investigation and it becomes a war of experts in court. That helps nobody. And as much as I've been appointed by the attorney for the owner of this vehicle, my job is to ensure that all the facts are addressed accurately and properly, so that at the end of the day, when this gets to court, if all experts can agree, we can only have one finding, and that is in favor of whatever the truth will be. Thank you.